Hi everyone, Joko here, and for this video, I know all of you are excited for this one. We'll be diving into the long-awaited and the new NUX Trident. But before we get into it, I hope you guys could hit that sub button below. It's a small gesture, but it helps my channel in a very big way. The Trident is the successor and the big brother of NUX's first integrated effects unit, the NUX Cerberus. While the Cerberus caters to a more traditional setup with it having only drive and distortion pedals, time-based effects, and modulations, the new X Trident ventures around the modern landscape with its amp modeling capabilities, simulating a fully fledged guitar rig at your disposal. Plus, its features and functionalities makes it a really versatile and practical tool that can make it your all-in-one solution for your guitar playing needs. UX's TSAC 4K amp modeling algorithm is the beating heart of the Trident. This algorithm is twice as complex as the previous versions, and it's designed to work with the analog circuits of the pedal to deliver a more dynamic and realistic sound that will blow your mind. With the TSAC 4K algorithm, UX has managed to capture the essence of 27 iconic amps from brands such as Marshall, Fender, Matchless, Hiwatt, Roland, and a whole lot more. Each of these amps now have more in-depth tuning options, and some of the amps even come with high and low inputs, 4 inputs for patch cable jumping, toggle switching for voicings, and other tone tweaking extras. The result is a breathtaking range of tonal options that will inspire your creativity and help you achieve your desired sound. So yeah, let's play around with it. Here are some of the amps that I really love. Now for the amps, I actually have some favorites that I use all the time. These are the amps that I use in all of my recordings and live performances. And yeah, whenever I just play around, I just circle through these list of amps. Yeah, so the first amp is actually my current favorite. Maybe I'll have a new favorite next week or tomorrow. Let's see. But right now, my favorite is the Brit 800 model. It's based on the JCM 800. I actually wrote the track with this amp model. And yeah, this one's called the Haranel, and hope you guys like it. The next sound I really like to show you guys is my high gain sound, and for this sound I'm actually torn between two amps. I really love these two. The first one is the Fireman model. This is actually my go-to high gain amp because of its mid-focused character and really warm sound. And the next one is actually one of my current favorites for high gain, and this is the Uber high gain model, which is based on the Bogner Uber shell. I really love this one because it sounds really powerful and angry and really punchy. It sounds really in your face. Yeah, so I just grown to like that. Yeah, and it just sounds awesome. So I made the track that could bring out both of their strengths, and I'm just gonna play along with it. I'm just gonna fade in between the amps, so you guys could get an idea of what the character and the sound is of each amp. So yeah, let's go. Alright, so this next amp is a twin reverb model, the TWN RVB model on the NUX Trident. And I use this on funk tracks. It's actually my main clean tone. I use it on funk tracks, funk rhythm, and all around groovy stuff. So yeah, here's how it sounds. Alright, so for the next amp, this is the Class A30 based on the Vox AC30, and I really love this amp, especially when I'm going for that Tim Henson or Manuel Gardner Fernandez type of stuff. So yeah, I actually wrote something a little close to that, and I wrote this riff using this amp model. So yeah, let's hear how it sounds. In addition, the Trident features an IR block with 27 cab IRs at 1024 sample resolution that can be sonically altered by a suite of digital cab controls. With 4 microphones and 3 positions available, you can experiment with different microphone placements to create the perfect sound for your performance. Plus, you can even add your own IRs if you want because it has extra 32 user IR slots. Another thing I love about the Trident is it has an editor software where you can tweak your sounds and settings on your computer. I personally prefer tweaking my sounds on my laptop rather than on the device itself because I feel like I'm playing around with a plugin on my computer. It's more visually satisfying for me. It's also more efficient for me rather than dialing knobs on the device itself. I just use the knobs for quick tweaks when I'm on stage or in rehearsals, but when I create my tones from scratch, I prefer having a good visual representation of each effect, and the editor software has a really good user interface, making it easier to see your tones on the screen and craft them even more meticulously. Another benefit of using the editor software is the ability to collaborate and share tones with others. When working with others, other bands, musicians, or producers, it can be helpful to share settings and presets to ensure consistency across different tracks or performances. With the editor software, you can easily import and export presets with others and collaborate on tone creation. The editor software can really expand the possibilities of the Trident. Like, you can play around with your MIDI settings. Here's the complete MIDI list. MIDI commands here. Everything is here. You can also import third-party IRs here. You can save them here. You have 32 slots right here. And you can even explore routing options for recording. You have your normal, you have your reamp setting, and you have your dry out. Alright, let's talk about the brains behind the Trident. This bad boy comes equipped with not just one, but 2 DSPs. That's digital sound processors. One DSP handles all the juicy amp modeling goodness, while the other takes care of the glorious effects from delays, reverbs, and modulations. This makes the TSA 4K algorithm work easily and makes it a cut above the rest. The Trident allocated one DSP for amp modeling because of the heavy processing of the extensive and complex tone tweaking options of the 27 amp models with high and low inputs, patch cable jumping, and voicing switches. The other DSP for effects processing on the Trident is just as impressive because NUX really locked in on capturing the nuances of the analog circuitry of each effect. Zoning into its amp modeling capabilities, the Trident now has more advanced control options for its amp models for maximum tone tweakability. We now have high and low inputs, Use the high input for a hotter signal going into the amp to drive the preamp even more, and low input for a more moderate guitar signal going into the amp. Now let's try playing around with it. Let's use the Class A30 amp model. Let's try the high input first. Now let's try the low input. As you can hear, the high input sounds hotter and more aggressive, while the low input is more tamed and mellow. Aside from the high and low inputs, we also have patch cable jumping. This is when you connect or jump two separate channels to combine signals from the different channels into a single input, or to bypass certain parts of the amp to get unique sounds. Jimi Hendrix did this with his old 100-watt Marshalls back then. So let's play around with a 100-watt Marshall, a Plexi 100. So here, you have a bright input, you have your normal input if you want to just go in directly. If you want to use one channel, here's input bright number 1. Let's use input bright number 2. Yeah, it feels hotter, it feels more compressed and saturated. Now let's try playing around with normal input. Here. Yeah, it sounds a little bit cleaner, less hot. Now let's try normal input 2. Sounds hotter, a bit more fuzzy. Now this is where it gets fun. Let's try Jumper Bright. Has that hot character from the bright channel, it has that warm character from the normal channel. So it's a really nice balance. Now let's try Jumper Bright 2. sounds really aggressive. Yeah, it combined the high inputs of the two channels. So it really sounds more compressed, more saturated, hotter even. Really nice for that rock rhythm sound. Now let's try jumper normal 1. Sounds really spanky. Sounds really aggressive. Let's hear how it sounds on rhythm. Whew, that's nice. Now finally, let's try jumper normal 2. It sounds a bit more compressed. It's really saturated, but it sounds more controlled than jumper normal 1. Yeah, that sounds really nice. And finally, some of the amps already have voicing switches. Some amp voicing options usually change the gain staging or change the EQ response or even add more compression. It really varies on the amp. Now let's check out this amp model. This amp model is the Lion Star. Now let's play around with this voicing switch. So we have 3 options. We have normal, thick, and thicker. And looking at it, it seems like it's going to change the EQ response. So it might add some low end to it since it's thicker. So let's hear how it sounds. Let's start with normal here. Now, initially it sounds fuzzy. Now let's hear how thick sounds. You can hear some bump in the low end. It got even more fuzzy. Now let's hear how thicker sounds. Sounds really good if you're going for that classic Santana sound. Now let's talk about the control interface of the Trident. The amp section features gain, level, bass, mid, treble, and presence, while the reverb and delay section has a level, both levels for reverb and delay, has time, repeat, and decay, and these switches are for what type of effect you're going for. For example, here at the delay section, you have BBD, tape, and digital delay, and for reverb, you have spring, plate, and hall. And the switch in the middle indicates what routing you're going for. For example, here, if you switch it at the bottom, it means that delay is going to be first in the chain. And the switch in the middle indicates what routing you're going for when it comes to delay reverb, which effect will go first. If the delay will go first or if the reverb will go first. That's the bottom and the middle part of the switch. Now, the top of the switch means these two effects are going to be in parallel. So it's not going to be in series of your chain. So you can go for this option if you just want to have a subtle hint of reverb or delay, if you don't want it to sound prominent in your chain. For the mod section, you have your rate, your depth, and your level. And you have your switch here to switch between effect type. So you have a chorus, a tremolo, and a phaser. So at the effect section, you have your sensitivity and level, and the switch here is for what effect type you're going for. For example, if you're going for a compressor, a filter, or a pitch type of effect. So yeah, that's the control panel. It gives you easier control if you want to switch around effects. It's really useful for live situations if you need to quickly tweak a certain sound. You can just play around with the knobs instead of going to a menu, a separate menu. Well, you can also do that on the Trident, but the control panel, the knobs in the control panel makes it easier and more efficient if you want to quickly change certain sounds of the effects. The knobs on the control panel just makes it easier and more efficient. Alright, so you may be thinking that the Trident only has a few options for each type of mod and time-based effect, which seems pretty limited. But here's the thing. The effects in the Trident are carefully chosen to provide the most essential types of reverbs, delay, and modulation. So even though there are only a few options, the available models are highly usable and effective. Okay, let's go to the screen. For example, the Hall reverb in the Trident can create an immersive, spacious sound that can transport you into another dimension. Well, that's how it is for me. The plate reverb, on the other hand, adds some sparkle and brightness to your guitar solos or vocals, making them stand out in the mix. The spring reverb provides a vintage sounding ambience that has a bright decay. And you also have your room reverb, whether you want to simulate that you're playing in a room. It's really helpful for that. When it comes to the delays, the BBD delay or the analog delay in the Trident has a warm and natural sound that can add some depth and dimension to your sound. The digital delay, on the other hand, is more precise and clear, making it perfect for creating rhythmic patterns, for example, dotted eights. And the tape echo provides a vintage lo-fi sound that can add some character to your tone. Though when it comes to effects options, the MG30 still has a lot more in the bank. But the good thing about the Trident is you can expand it or integrate it with other effects pedals using the effects loop. For example, if you want the effects options of the MG30 and the amp modeling capabilities of the Trident, you can merge both using the Trident's effects loop. The effects loop also has different loop options. You can put the effects in series with your rig flow. For example, here in serial, you can put them in parallel with your rig for a more subtle sound. And you can even branch out sound signals from the effects loop here, creating a wet-dry rig if you want. That's a great idea for a monster setup. But I think that's for another video. Let's play around with it anyway, just to get a taste of it. So for this setup here, I have the MG30 hooked up to the effects loop of the Trident. The MG30 has a shimmer reverb block turned on since the Trident doesn't have a shimmer reverb option. I have set the effects loop of the Trident in parallel, so the MG30 won't affect the sound fully. Here's how it sounds. Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, I'll play more around with the setup and I'll try to squeeze a lot out of it for another video. Though for boosts, you have a lot of options to play around with. You have 7 types of boost pedals to drive the amp model even further. For example, you have a TS style overdrive, a blues overdrive, exotic style drives, and a lot more. Now, talking more about live situations, the Trident has a lot of foot switches. With the Trident's extensive foot switch options, its live capabilities are super efficient. You have 2 switches to control the banks, 3 switches for preset switching, and 5 to toggle individual effects such as boost, delay, reverb, mod, and effects. The foot switches here on the far right, here the effects foot switch, if you hold it, it can activate the looper, and if you hold the boost foot switch, it can activate the tuner. The functions of the foot switches and how they're laid out really gives you a nice balance of analog and digital. You have the good old feel of analog pedals, but it's set in a modern system. And if you're performing solo, you have a 60-second phrase looper at your disposal. Another thing that gives the Trident its magic is its extensive I/O options. It has 2 unbalanced outs, a headphone out, an auxiliary input for external playback devices, an effects loop if you want to integrate external hardware with it, a USB-C input for your computer, 3.5mm pins for MIDI I/Os, and my personal favorite, 2 XLR outs. The XLR outs made it even easier to play live and go direct to the front of house. Now here's how I use it for live shows. Each bank represents a song from my set list, and each bank or song has 3 presets. Bank number 10 is my bank for my song Push. I have a general crunch preset for most of the song. This is Push Main. I have an ambient crunch for the spacey parts, and I have a high gain lead sound for the main solo and the outro solo. Then I just play around with the individual effects foot switches. For example, if I wanted more gain, or if I want to turn the delay off or on, or even just add a chorus sound to my leads. It's all there. Alright, so let's talk about how you can set it up live. Here's an example. This one is actually my personal signal flow for live shows. One unbalanced out goes to my FR speaker, sometimes two on stage for stage volume and monitoring, and two XLR outs go to the front of house. Awesome, right? Plus, going direct to the FOH makes your sound even more consistent whenever you play gigs or shows instead of miking up an amp every time you play since you're using the same processed IRs. I've been using the Trident for all of my live shows and gigs since I got it last December, and it has made my life way easier. I just put it inside this small bag with a few cables and a power adapter, and I'm good to go. Speaking of power adapters, for its power requirements, you don't have to worry about bringing around a really big power cable because it only needs a 9 volt 500 milliampere adapter to fire it up. So all in all, the Trident is really a go-to all-in-one tool for your tonal needs. May it be for studio recordings, live use, or even just playing around in your home. Oh, by the way, I also created 9 signature presets that are included in the Trident factory settings. To give you a taste of what they sound like, I created a demo video featuring all 9 presets and get a better idea of what the Trident is capable of. To check out the demo, all you have to do is click this, and you're good to go. I also included the video link in the description below. For more info on the Trident, please do check out newxfx.com. The Trident will be available soon worldwide, so stay tuned to NUX's socials for updates. Links are also in the description below. So that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. Stay safe and keep pushing. Bye-bye.